continuing the digital first conversation. This is a bit, so I'd like to pick up where Alex left off a bit. So this topic is, how did digital first transform live events? And so I also have a bit of a personal connection to this because our team was responsible for taking all of the in-person events that we did and having a digital first mentality about how did we provide as much of a personal experience to the attendee as if they were at the event. And I know we've talked about that in a couple of different panels now at length, but from a technical perspective, I thought I'd ask everybody here, from your perspective individually, what does digital first in terms of technology and how it supports the events mean to you or your organization? So whoever wants to start.
All right, I'll start. I think from our perspective, and Alex, I think we're going to use your name a fair amount through this, is that he's highlighted a couple of things. It's about using technology to make the experience the same for the audience, right? So when we talk about digital first, we are trying to create an experience to engage the audience that can't be in person, right? So it's going to be give them the ability to feel they're participating, to feel that they're participating in that event, they're engaged in that event. And again, it's one of those, with all the different challenges of, keeping the attention, you want to make sure that the technology allows you to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. From our perspective, we wanted the end user who's actually in control of the broadcast to have a really easy workflow and a really sharp presentation. And I like the example of the Super Bowl. The person is going to have a different experience here in the room versus, or in the stadium versus someone who's bringing that experience online. And so for us too, it was how do we bridge that gap and help equip our people who are viewing our solutions or using them for the first time to be able to really dive in there and have a good experience. It's all about the user experience for us.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd say we've been looking at how to get chat boards, those kind of things, a little bit more incorporated into the events themselves. We worked with clients to look at it more like small groups participating and not individual users going into an event. So try to maintain little separate environments, meetings that then get piped into the event itself with chat boards and those kind of things. And none of that was really kind of talked about before the pandemic. It was all about, you're going to stream it live and that's it. So the interactive side of it has developed for sure into something that's not making it individualized as much as small groups, in my opinion.
Mikey.
Hi. Digital first for us is the new norm. It for us is the new paradigm in production with regards to actually, how can I say this? It's a new way that we had to go ahead and take what we were doing before and then actually transition it into something that is actually, at the end of the day, something that worked for our clients. So.
Yeah, and it seems like some of us were better prepared than others. And that doesn't mean it was good or bad. It's just, some of us had tools already that were in place, and it was just a matter of deploying them in a different way. So one thing that I'd love to kind of cover is there's so much meat on the bone here for 30 minutes. It's impossible to cover because how we're transitioning. Okay, so now we wrote the book in pencil because every event, every year, it's different, and things are the pendulum is kind of turning into a bit more of in-person events. How do we deploy that digital first concept from the get-go? For me, it's not an afterthought. It has to be at the front end, and I think that was discussed in an earlier panel. Mo, just as I'm picking on you, when clients and customers come to your company, how are you guys changing that train of thought? And I'm going to throw out, cloud production, for example. Obviously, that's a tool, but it's not going to work for everybody. They may not be able to budget for a cloud production environment for a week-long event. What's Evertz doing in that kind of realm with solutions for customers?
I mean, as you mentioned, most companies or some companies had taken that sort of first step into treating live events with, broadcast quality production tools, facilities like Microsoft Studios, and with Mikey there, and with Goyal and such. Not everyone had that, right? What we saw as we moved through the pandemic was first, how do we keep the production still going, but having people working remotely. I mean, the first thing was, how do we engage? How do we keep the show going? So you started to look at how do we bring the tools that are sitting in front in a room or in a production control room that would be, bringing people in, and do that. How do you extend that out to their homes and make sure the experience is, the same? And we talked about this in the early day, like in the preparation for this. Mikey has a full production studio in his home. He's got all the tools. So how do we enable that? How do we make sure that they can still deliver the same experience that they would have done by being in-house and being remote? Then you extend that out to now, how do I use the cloud to now open that up to other companies? It's because, like you said, they may not have that budget, but they still have the importance of corporate messaging and being able to still deliver that message to their audience, whether it's employees or their partners. And they need to do that in a very reliable, a high quality method, because some of those conversations determine maybe the future of the company or whatever. So you still have to bring that resilience to it. And that's what we bring to the spaces. As Matt mentioned, we do a Super Bowl. Like Super Bowl for us is what you should be delivering every day. So how do we bring that mentality to our customers that aren't necessarily familiar with that, and how do we present them the tools and the technology to be able to do that with almost anybody as well?
Matt, what about Ross?
Yeah, so I'm in an interesting position because I was a Ross customer when all of this hit, and now I'm learning about the solutions of how Ross helped other people. And what I've been learning for me is that Ross was there to answer a question if I needed it, in a way that I hadn't had to use the gear before. So for me now, in trying to help corporate markets, it's kind of doing the same thing, and again, circling back to the user experience. And so how does the company pivot to say we're used to working with broadcasters or sports broadcasters, and now that same equipment needs to be a little bit different and work a little bit different, and be able to say the message, right, of we can do this and you can accomplish it, right? Everyone's a broadcaster. That kind of tagline is scary to a lot of people, and I think that was something that, as an industry, we needed to overcome. And so it really became, I think for us it really became, again, focus on user experience. How can things be flexible? How can we give the messaging and give the training and the availability for people to be able to say, I need help with this, and if more than 5 people are needing help, there's probably a lot more that need help, So coming up with content that was very focused on either church markets or corporate markets or healthcare, whatever it is, trying to provide that content that is helpful for everyone and not just maybe product focused.
What hit home for me, Marty and SVG held some virtual events throughout the pandemic, and it was, we thought we were alone in this whole thing at Microsoft, writing our own tools, working with teams, developers to create better signals, and we were asking a lot of our companies, developers, to build tools that we thought were just for us, but really when we started joining these calls that SVG would host, it was like, oh, we're not alone. And that's kind of the crux of this whole thing, is that we all do have a lot of unique things and tools that we all do to serve our clients, but at the end of the day, we're kind of doing the same thing. What about CTI? What have some of your customers thrown your way that have been challenging, and then what maybe you're carrying forward?
Sure, yeah. It's been a lot of education for our clients. You can't just take a Teams codec or a laptop and stick it in your event or your town hall meeting. It just doesn't work. It doesn't come across well. So We're unique in the fact that we have a long AV integration background, but we also now have a broadcast team that I'm a part of, where we've tried to kind of join these things together and get out of the mindset of, it's not, you can use an SDI cable, it's okay. It doesn't have to be HDMI camera and the stuff, right? So, and then it's gone from that into having systems like a TVU party line or something where you've got remote participants in a waiting room that get brought into an event. So all of those things we've had to really kind of explain to our clients that this is where it's going, and it's amazing really how fast that happened. I mean, you think about just pre-pandemic, cloud intercom was not really a huge thing, and then all of a sudden we need it, like now. We're having events all over the place. We need to talk to people in different states, countries, whatever, and it was fast forward. And most of our corporate clients had no idea how to deal with that and how to keep moving forward on new content for events and town hall meetings and such. So it's been a lot of education.
For us, we were the conduit of communication internally for Google and for the executive teams that transitioned and actually had to have a lot of messaging globally. So our assignment was a little bit different. We hit the ground running. We had an opportunity to start doing the productions that we were doing, but we also found at the same time we had a lot of challenges with regards to different people coming in the room, different things with regards to people stepping on people and just finding the clunkiness in the very beginning. But for us and our crews, it was really difficult because we also had to create bench depth, because it wasn't just the fact that we had to communicate or be the conduit of communication for the executives to the teams. It was also we had to do it for a lot of the divisions. So our challenges were creating the bench depths, creating Oscar-winning or award-winning DGA directors into graphics ops and playback ops. We had issues with everything from captioning all the way through DSMs and playbacks. How were we in sync with the people that we were actually doing events were, down to simple things like making sure that they were on the same slides that they were talking to. So it was a rebirth for us, and we found that at the end of the day that understanding that nobody was going to come to our rescue because you could not onboard anybody else, we found ourselves in a position to just dig in and get going. And once we got going, we understood through all our pain, we actually got better, and our teams have actually been a lot more resilient and find ourselves pretty much at the forefront of it now.
And to that, I mean, I think that was, for us in the broadcast industry, it takes a lot of time for things to churn, or it gets created and stuff. And I think what we saw was we also learned from our end users as they, everyone kind of was found at the same, at this new era where we got to do things a different way. So everyone's kind of jumping in, trying different things. So it was, I had a conversation a couple of years ago where, the COVID kind of kicked off a new revolution of innovation, right? Because you just had to find ways to solve problems. And working closely with end users to say, we need to be able to do X, Y, Z, how do we do that? Helped us kind of figure out, okay, we need to rethink how we're approaching things, right? And now you're sort of looking at how do we make, digital first is a reality, but also how do we make, it more reliable? How do we make the experience flawless? Because really that's what we want to do, is we want to make me being in a stadium or in venue as flawless as someone being online or watching it from somewhere else, right? So we have to bring the tools and start to now enhance the tools that I hate to use the word patch together, but that's really what it was. Now we need to look at things to make things more robust and look at standards and a few other pieces to make those things work better.
And the turnaround time for some of these asks, I think early on a lot of us were asking for things that were perceived as one-off.
Yep.
And I think now it's like, okay, it's not just Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn that's asking for this stuff. And I've always kind of thought, hey, if 3 or 4 of us are asking for it, there's going to be a lot more folks that maybe they're not even asking for it, but when they see a feature or an option, they go, oh, I want that. So I'm always trying to influence where I can with what's perceived as the big boys in the broadcast community to say, hey, we're not just the only ones. And so that's what's also cool about this event, is that we do have a voice, and I think, it's not just the Googles, the LinkedIns, the Facebooks that have the big budgets. There's a lot of other folks that are going to gain from a lot of the tools that we're developing. Switching over to the topic of, and I'm just going to throw out Zoom and Teams, and I know Google's got their own tools. There's a great mixture of a panel here because everybody has a bit of a different take on what initially was a teleconferencing tool, and now it's being used as contribution video backhaul. And I'm going to pick on Gary Schneider for a second and go, that thing we did this morning where he had an SRT feed coming back to here, I challenged him yesterday and I said, I'm going to ask you a dumb question. Why didn't you just use Zoom or Teams? And he goes, because I can do better than that. I can do a contribution video feed from a remote office, and I want to showcase my technology. And I'm like, duh, I know that was a softball question. What are we doing as an industry to, and there may be some Microsoft folks in the office in the room here, so I apologize if what are we doing to influence them to better the game, to provide maybe not necessarily a 2110 level uncompressed video signal over internet, but how are we working with them to better the productions and maybe even use them as a contribution video source in areas where maybe there is not a connection to the switch or level 3. So anybody feel free to chime in there.
It's a kind of interesting question because I never thought about telling Microsoft what I what I think they should be doing. So glad you posed that.
But this is what the panel's for.
I mean, yeah,
so.
I mean, absolutely. I just look elsewhere, like, oh, well, that's what they do. You know, let's try and use somebody else's product to accomplish something better quality. But that's fair. We should give that feedback because I mean, somehow we got to get the productions where they're a little, it's more connected as far as remote versus in-venue production. You know, you're not running two shows. You don't have two switchers. You know, it's all cohesive and together, and that's not something you would expect to get out of a Teams kind of platform, but. We should tell them.
And I think of Azuro Cam, the coach's cam that was around many years, probably still is in effect today, and how that was a all-encompassing turnkey product that is awesome. But we always tried to leverage our influence inside of Microsoft to help the Teams team develop better products. We were customer zero for the NDI out of Teams, and that's ubiquitous now. So I know Evertz is a big partner. I don't know if it's official, but you want to talk about a bit about that one.
And you sort of led me into that one perfectly. Working with yourselves at Microsoft Studios, but also working with the Teams folks, like reaching out to the product managers and understanding that the tool was developed with one intent, but was really quickly utilized for others, right? So, like you said, it was a teleconferencing, which meant I just need to be able to bring all these people together in a room and have that conversation. But now when you want to broadcast that, you want to bring it into a broadcast ecosystem, you needed to be able to break up those individual people into individual flows, individual camera feeds to an extent, understand the nuances of that. So, one of the works that the Teams folks did was they launched the Broadcast Development Kit, the BDK, as a introductory point and was work as an open source to help build that sort of toolkit. So you saw NDI was one of the first ones, and now you've got SRT, so the ability to take individual participants in that Teams call and have them as individual streams into a production as over SRT. That's a great first step. Next step is, well, how do we handle latency? How do we handle quality? Those are the kind of the next challenges that we've sort of fed back, and we're working with the teams to help evolve that product. And again, working with others, same concept, right? So,
how about at Google? What did you guys do?
Well, for us, we were kind of in the confines of security. It was security over quality.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, when you're working with the executive events team, what they're saying and what they are amplifying has to be secure. So we stayed within the parent Google products of that situation. But when we got to other shows that were a little more lenient, we did actually play around with other different platforms. But for us, it literally, we are bound by security. A lot of the messaging, a lot of the stuff internally that's going on, literally, at the end of the day, has to stay secure. So,
but a lot of that was flowing through a broadcast environment.
It was. Well, it's actually a really cool, it brings up a really cool point because because we were all at home, all of our venue TDs and all of our venue EICs and broadcast engineers actually had an opportunity to actually collaborate and actually try to figure out different solutions that we were trying to bring the value up and bring the engagement up more. We've actually had people like, I would bring up Jan. Jan was one of our EICs, and and Marissa, they actually went and had to literally, aside of building what we were building, they went and got cloud certified. So I thought that, the lengths that what we did to actually present options for more qualities and more engagements the bars were a lot higher. But it was a really unique time to actually have so much brain power in one room focused on one common goal. So we found ourselves feeling very lucky based on the fact that we actually had a project to all sink our teeth into when we knew we had friends and colleagues who weren't working. And we took advantage of it and literally jumped in the water and swam. And we knew we had to get to the other side, and we knew there wasn't a lifeguard there. So when it came to the quality and everything, that's when we really started to spawn off all the stuff with regards to cloud. But the hardest part about it was all the different players, all the different components that we need to actually put together a system. Not all these vendors weren't necessarily speaking to one another. And remember, everyone was sequestered, everyone was at home. So we found ourselves in a situation that we may have had good ideas, but how can we get to a Ross, or how can we get to any audio company or anybody who plays a vital part in what we're trying to accomplish to get them to buy in? And I want to bring this up. I feel that this is a really good time to let everybody know that at the end of the day, we had Dave Van Hoy, and at a time when there was no NAB, there was not a time, this was a time when people couldn't, based on your pocketbooks, go ahead and set up a meeting to get something accomplished. We had our leader who had trust and relationships with all the vendors. So we actually had Dave go out and talk to the different vendors and have the vendors believe in us and use some of their engineering staffs to all contribute to our solutions. And I feel like this is quite possibly one of the things that got us so far ahead during these times.
The scramble that the manufacturers did to support us, the clients, to put together kits. Like when we toured Google yesterday, I was just like smiling because the management of the kits, the standardization or the consistency of the kits, and they're getting deployed to people that aren't talent. And, so I think early on, some of us may have deployed kits with no instructions, and it was just, we knew the phone call was gonna happen, and as time evolved and we got better, we laminated the instructions and we put them in, and I think we all kind of were in that same boat, so I chuckled when I was at Google yesterday.
I also want to speak on even some of the most foundational levels of everything from latency to communications to comms to literally turning on your piece of the puzzle of the production and saying, I'm up, can you hear me, can you hear me, can you see me, can you see me? Yeah. And having that transition all the way into flawless productions is quite the journey.
Couple minutes left. I'd love to kind of just leave enough time for everybody to talk to my last topic, and that is, what are we cherry picking from the last couple of years where we got scrappy? We went a little non-traditional, and what are we taking from that, bringing it into 2023 and beyond? And how are we incorporating that to our live environments, our SD2110 environments, maybe our SDI environments, maybe Pro AV, maybe there isn't even a broadcast infrastructure. So it's a big question. I'd love for each of you just to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'll go first. What we havenent been able to do in the corporate AV market is, we're based on a lot of Crestron control systems, QSys control systems at many of these corporate clients, and there's no tie-in to do a digital event with a system like that. So we're looking for ways like how do we tie that broadcast element in with control of an AV system for these, let's call it mid-sized corporate clients that have a room similar in size, that's how the system runs, and they want to be able to just bring remote talent and collaborate with others that are not in the room into the session. So that's a big part that I want to see move forward, as well as you brought it up, NDI sources or PIPs for every talent that's in there.
So IPMX, that may be that bridge.
Yeah, very well may be.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, thanks, Peter, for leading that up. I mean, IPMX is one of those efforts. I know we heard a little bit of the works that are being done by the SMPTE folks. Again, that's really where we need to start to have the industry talk to each other, right? Again, interoperability is important. That's how we're going to get the best tools to produce the best events, to do these things as quickly and as easy as possible. And again, we want to make it simple. We want to make it easy that anybody can do it. So, the works that the SMPTE folks and the AIMS group and everything else in terms of defining IPX and trying to bring a little bit of that sort of standardization to that environment will definitely help us move forward. Using common tools like NDI or SRT is also helpful because I think a lot of the industry understands that. So I think that's where we're trying to kind of take the advantages from both sides and sort of merge that together. But we can all speak the same language and help. By having that, well, then we're able to kind of deploy technology a lot faster and bring the best of breed forth, right, rather than these closed environments.
Yeah, and glue. I mean, glueware is like converters everywhere, bridging. And so the more we can take the wall-wart devices out of our facility, the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, from a product standpoint, it's learning to be flexible and continuing to build flexible gear to be able to tap into the same piece of gear, being able to tap into multiple verticals or industries, and being able to utilize maybe NDI more for people who are starting to make that jump from a more corporate Crestron-based system who's used to that, or it's because they speak that language that they're able to communicate that, and then we're able to communicate and intake that, and then build a platform off of what they know today, and also playing well with others in terms of control. So being able for us to be able to talk well with Crestron products or talk well with QSYS products, things like that's normal and people know it, but they don't know that it can work together right now. So leveraging different aspects of our team to be able to utilize our dashboard control, if you will. It's just being able to turn a room on. And so have someone who doesn't understand and who's intimidated maybe, but they can come in and they can use a conference room table, tablet for Teams, Zoom, Cisco, whatever it is, and giving them that same experience. And again, not putting us inside of a box, that we can work with others, we can integrate well, and give someone that a really good user experience, and then end user experience on the other side of whatever medium that is that they're communicating.
Yeah, speaking from the perspective of the operators and the actual people who are actually touching the gear and getting it done, I see it as a time for opportunity. It's a new norm right now. There's new gear, there's new things to be learned, and I feel that at this stage of the game, understanding it and getting involved gives you the opportunity to transition into a lot more different environments and working with a lot more different people. I'm seeing situations where taking this into music and what have you with regards to live streaming and having camera ops and TDs and switchers and taking it to different levels of having people watching it abroad and hitting a lot higher numbers is a huge thing. I'd just like to say that with regards to all the different people who are even at this show who are trying to figure out where they're going to be at and what have you, where do you fit in all this digital first? It really is. It is resetting the starting line. I really feel there's a lot of opportunity with regards to the actual text and the positioning of them being in part in executing these events.
It almost kind of levels the playing field in some ways, depending on who you ask, because a lot of people had no idea how to pull off a broadcast, right, or a webcast. And so the concept the level setting of, hey, we have an opportunity here to kind of rewrite the book on how digital events are done in combination with an in-person event. So
I wanted to also say, too, with regards to budgets and understanding that you can have frontline directors working with great A1s who've done great shows like Salesforce, Dreamforce, and other people who direct everything from broadcast news, all being able to collaborate from home saves a lot on the budgets. We're not out there. We don't have hotel rooms. We don't have per diems, and there's just a plethora. We don't have shadows on site. We're not paying meal penalties. if you think of it from the perspective of crewing up really red hot talent and across your crews, and everyone can do it from home, I feel that even as producers, you guys can make a lot stronger teams as well.
Ryan, Mo, Matt, Mikey, thank you very much. It's a great panel.